Today is my birthday. Not a milestone birthday, you understand, i.e. one with a naught in it, but old enough that the candles on my cake, which I'm hopeful to enjoy later on in the day, to melt the icing before I can blow them all out, should they put the right number on the cake. Every one of us has a birthday, and 2 of the 3 of my friends also celebrate their birthdays today. We all know that birthdays are big business in modern society, but this wasn't always the case. In fact, celebrating each and every birthday with food, gifts and fellowship is a relatively recent development in human society. Even if modern people don't go all out celebrating their own special day, family and friends know what their birthday means and acknowledges it when it comes round each year. So I wonder, why do we celebrate this day of our birth? The answer began thousands of years ago in the very earliest of societies. I discovered that the first reliable account of a birthday being recognised comes from where else? The Bible. In Genesis, the ancient text states that Pharaoh was celebrating his birthday. And we read in Genesis, "Now the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position so that he could once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand." Obviously, that was a big honour. We see the clear mention of a birthday and a typical birthday celebration. The Pharaoh is bringing together all his officials for a feast in his honour. The story has been dated to roughly 1400 BCE, which is before Common Era rather than, as we usually say, before Christ. Meaning that the earliest mention of a birthday comes from well over 3,500 years ago. Despite the ancient origins of the idea of celebrating a day of birth, this rite was constrained, of course, primarily to monarchs, who were seen as being closest to the gods. Like so much of our modern traditions, birthdays have solid roots in old Greek and Roman traditions. The Greeks and Romans gave us the tradition of presents, candles, and parties for birthdays. There is no distinct moment in which these traditions are cemented, but rather the result of a blending together of sort of different traditions over the years. The Greeks and Romans adhered to the now famous pagan traditions involving their pantheon of gods and goddesses. This religion focused heavily on the cycle of offerings and festivals that marked special days. These days often correspond to a particular natural or celestial event and drew crowds of revellers who would give gifts and offerings of food, wine, and handmade gifts. We start to see the recognition of a very special day commemorating a single birthday person becoming widespread. Wealthy members of society would gather in their spacious villas, like we do, and share gifts, foods, and wishes with their family and friends on these specific days. Things such as candles, which were a key part of offerings and rituals, began to be used on these special days. It was during this period that the majority of common people, even slaves, began to celebrate certain days that were deemed important to their class, region, or family with special rituals that resemble very much our modern day birthdays. Then came along Christians. Christianity, during the peak of the Roman influence, saw early Christians' birthday celebrations and revellers. The Christians would see it as a pagan tradition to be avoided at all costs. In the 4th century, seeing the popularity of these Roman festivals, the church set out to create their own similar festival. So Christmas was born and was billed as the celebration of Jesus and his birthday, and was strategically placed in December for no other reason but to counteract the existing Roman festivals that dominate that month. Excuse me. Christmas saw a change in Christians' attitude towards birthdays, and though roughly initially being at odds with the idea of birthdays in the beginning, it is Christianity that sees a massive rise in this practice all across Europe. When Christians began to celebrate Jesus' birthday in December, they began to celebrate various saints and their births and deaths as well. In medieval times, most European Christians had a patron saint, a name saint which they revered and celebrated on an annual basis. Mine is, of course, St. Angela, whose feast day is January the 27th. She founded the Ursuline Order, the oldest religious order of Catholic women dedicated to the education of girls. Something I have to say I only found out yesterday on Google. I did know there was a St. Angela, but who she was I didn't know. This catalogue of revered patron saints is which opens the door for us to celebrate our own individual birthdays. And we celebrate our patron saint at St. James in July. This year, hopefully, as a gathering church with candles, food and singing, just like a birthday party. The combination of the widespread use of the universal calendar and ideals of personal freedom and an upturn in the wealth of the common man saw an increase in personal birthday celebrations. As strict religious discipline began to stop and people started celebrating the day of their own birth rather than their patron saint's birthday, bringing with it the beginning of modern birthday celebrations, and families had the means of tracking these specific dates of children's births and were able to celebrate with sweets such as cake and bestow gifts upon them. And of course, I should imagine that's when the birthday card shops really started to make their fortune. Today, birthdays are a common celebration for many people all over the globe. I say for many people because there's still certain religions, like the Jehovah's Witness, that still think it's a pagan celebration, so do not celebrate birthdays. And of course, our brothers and sisters in the poorer countries don't have celebrations like we would. When I was working at the surgery, we used to have a lot of patients at Cadlington House, which was a home for physically and mentally disabled children, though they were adults by this time, over at Blenworth. Many of you will have known it. And we had one particular patient there. They didn't know his birthday. His mother he had no family. So his birthday was the day that he joined Cadlington House as a patient or a client or it was his home, and they only knew his name by his first name, so they made up a second name. So his name was, this isn't his name, but his name was, say, Stephen D. Stephen. So that poor person, who was also blind and dumb, really was not aware of all these celebrations, and that was quite a shame. When I was a child, parties were events held at home with jelly, cake and games like Pass the Parcel, and much to my mother's dismay, a party bag for guests to take home. Nowadays, birthday parties, we know, can run into hundreds of pounds per child, let alone when adults have one, with parents hiring halls, entertainers, a caterer and even a beautician to give the guests a makeover, even if they are only 7 years old. Parents seem to also need to stay, also requiring, of course, food and drink for themselves, not forgetting the party bags which still exist, and some mums trying to outdo the previous party and what goes in those bags. And if you're anything like me, they always used to bring home pieces of cake which looked beautiful but sat in the fridge in a bag and ended up in the dustbin. So again, we spent a lot of money on things. You can see why it costs so much. During lockdown, I'm sure most parents have saved a small fortune. What started as an ancient tradition for monarchs to celebrate their closeness to the gods turned into widespread religious ceremonies, then to our own individual religious adherence, before morphing into a completely individual day of celebration. Next time you celebrate your own birthday, and a friend of ours has got one on Friday, or the birthday of a close friend or family member, remember that the tradition that is recorded first in Genesis stretches back thousands of years and has a long and winding path from the mist of time to the present day where you now stand and celebrate. I'm now going to sit down with a nice cup of tea and open my cards and presents, and I might even open the box of chocolates that Trish bought me as a present yesterday. I've already said been said happy birthday to from my 2.5-year-old twins in Australia, but I will speak to the older children in a little while. So enjoy your day, and I'll see some of you tonight at evening prayer. Bye.